and then the path of noble, in other words, that of Buddhahood. And so, within the context of this fivefold path, the short remark in the beginning, can be said to show the first path within that five-tiered path, the path of accumulation. Now, what does that mean? The path of accumulation mean here is basically, within the context of the teaching of the Buddha, what we are looking for is freedom from suffering. Okay, freedom from suffering means you realize that this dissatisfactory nature of life, and then having acknowledged it, you also want to get out of this dissatisfactory nature of life. And how do you do that? Is by understanding that it has its own causes and conditions which must be countered. And so in this way, when you understand that this suffering that we have now is because of our, first of all, what you want to do is to completely feel determined to leave this samsara, the cycle of existence. And how do you go about with that is by countering the causes that bring us into this cycle over and over again. And that causes are those of the bondage. They are called the bondage. In other words, the different negative or destructive emotions like attachment, anger, jealousy, and so forth. And so these bind us in the samsara, in this cycle, vicious cycle of existence. And so by understanding that, when you genuinely want or have this determination to leave samsara, to get out of this samsara, that genuine sense of wanting to get out of samsara is what we understand as the thought of renunciation, that's called. And so, that is the first path, within this five-tiered path. The first path is the path of accumulation. When you have that genuine sense to want to go out of samsara. In other words, what binds us in this samsara is also mainly the attachment, craving, as it is mentioned in one of the teachings by Tsongkhapa, the three principal aspects of the path. Attachment and craving bind us in samsara, he says. And so these two are like, the analogy that he uses is the rope, the rope of attachment and craving bind us in this samsara. So when you understand that you are bound by the ropes of attachment and craving, and then other negative emotions, and then you want to really get out of this samsara by overcoming these negative emotions, that is the genuine sense of the renunciation, as we call it. And so the short remark in the beginning, or is showing this path of accumulation. And then the rest of the four, the parts out of the five, the rest of the parts, the four remaining parts are shown in the detailed explanation of the text. And so what also binds us, we must understand, what we must also understand is that what binds us in this samsara is also our karma, which is in turn brought about by these negative, destructive emotions. So in this way, the text here shows the path of accumulation when it refers to Shariputra, any son or noble daughter of, so wishes to engage in the perfection. The practice of profound perfection and wisdom should clearly see this way. They should see that perfectly that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. And so, in other words, now what we also can understand is that these kind of teaching, the perfection of wisdom teachings, as Rinpoche has also mentioned yesterday, explicitly what this kind of discourse teaches is emptiness. then implicitly the different path systems.
这不是别的精神。this，我我知道就上星期多么那么样都到我设定多点的节，多点看多了，我我的，上星期多么那个样到我就是到我，上星期多么那个样到我就是到我顺的，东北那个样到就是到顺了嘛的，上星期东北那个样到就是到顺，东设的上星期东北，看的顺旅游个的，多点的看多了，东北设的了。가지기체벌자지시네라 신시 통보 수고 순도를 스티리 오로 동세 장단디 도딩가도 지버지시네 아데 동동세 지당기 동보 장마인도 내가 장마인가 라신지 매바 라신지 매바세디 가상나도 쉬고 라신 뒤에 라왕유 뒤에 라왕도 주고 내가 강라에 미뒤버시시네 랑수투버시시네 주딩이 지연요마 뒤보면 하스 뒤니 샤고에 샤다 我是对你下当的，他上个做北京去学的，看的北下下为呢，日记的钱存为呢，是吧？肉记的钱存为呢，钱当土色学了，你学我的养猪米的，养猪社学的，哪着啊？你养猪，马包的个怕学的，土钱了，我马包米的土钱学。 दिने या जानी उनकी चीज़ वही ना दिने या जिले या जिने उनकी चीज़ वही ना खुला दिशो मुझे चीन चालू हो कोई यान जिदी हो शेषा लारे चीन जिले टूरे बेस लासु ना चीन ता टूर से थी जिकुरान की मुझे शेयर भी तो जिकुरान की मुझे चीन बाता चीन ता टूर से थी तेंके वो यो वही ना 我的家军的钱这些，的家军出的些就我了哇，的要嘛的，你兄弟呢呀，人都一定，你兄弟哭了，钱这，他兄弟哭了，出的不蛮好的哇，他兄弟呢呀，人的，你兄弟呀，人的哭了，钱这样，其实钱的出些的，干啥哦，为了呀，人人都给了嘛，本地用给干啥了，对呢下呀嘛都。 리쿠랑이 뭐냐 시에미도 리쿠랑이 뭐지 근데 디 비천이로 디 천버지네 추탕지 그래서 뭐다 근데 디 글라스 이거 이거 유스게 봤을 때 이거 유스게 시부 시지 퍼버스에도 시부 옛날에 시부세디 파스 니가 듣는 소리죠. 파스 시부세디 저로네 대바이나 뉘는 시부디 저로 가서 뉘디 요 무부디 통화라 미지벌 신이지 시부스라고 지고. 그래서 시부세디야 무부 신지의 뒤에 샤야마도 시에요. 무부 신지의 뒤에 샤부지를 마도 시부 쿠란기 뭐네 수신 세워 지마. 디시고 아디 된다디 안에도 시고레스나 빼는 기로 추신 통화가 집을 재미제세디 문에지는 통행기 강사기 시발라이 하는 거 미시 빼는 미기 시발 미세들이 여기 있는 집을 좀 마투버시지 통해 들려 있는 거 나중에는 하이 미기 무시스 하이 미기 진 세스는 간데 지 미시 七八我今天给入新的，我不是通过了地图表嘛的，就像电影里讲个，通些给你写了对呢，那说，他比较重要，那个米西普朗了对呢，我不是通过了马几个章节，跟西古斯老图表为呢，米西看些了，长毛都西不下来的东西，米西不是我的，俺那些别下为呢，塞我塞。 시부디 그러면 나로 경우부터 통교로 나로 뭐 통 신앙 통세 다시 통세디 맞좀 미기 미시를 뛰는 시월에 야나 둔두기 미시를 뛰는 시월에 我说没没西，我先碰到那地地药嘛，西部的地药嘛，因为没西他那地嘛那个是那位呢，对老多嘛，就这个是开始没西部西部我先碰到的这个西部啊，现在的有钱的西部，西部忽然间我呢我不行，你碰到了嘛这个解释，西部忽然间我基本我的写是这样的，有钱的西部的对呢，下也是我的送过。
So, since the teaching itself explicitly teaches the emptiness, it says, the five aggregates are inherently, empty of inherent nature, intrinsic existence. Empty of intrinsic existence, just by using the term inherently or intrinsic, empty of intrinsic nature, what it shows is that we're not just talking about something being like a vacuum, there's nothing, like empty, something like, the glass being empty of water or some drink or something like that. Here the teaching explicitly says that the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic nature or inherent nature. And so because of this, what we have to understand is that what it teaches is not just some kind of nothingness, but that things are empty of inherent or intrinsic nature, which means that things are dependently arisen. And therefore, everything, whatever you may bring up, everything is empty of any independent existence. That is what should be understood. To understand this, we can take the example of a hill, for example. When you say you are climbing up, what that shows is you are at the bottom of, or somewhere, in in that hill, not on top, but at the bottom. When you say when you're climbing up, you are going upwards. Whereas in Tibetan we have these two words. If you have a hill, it's like a slope, right? There's a slope. So the one who is at the bottom would say, I'm going up, which means Ken is going upwards. Whereas the person on top of the hill would say, I'm going down, means tu. So we have these two words, but I think in English you can talk in terms of a slope, right? So whether you are at the bottom of the slope or whether you are on the top of the slope or the hill, accordingly you will say you are going up or you are going down the slope or the hill. So just what that means is, whether you are going up or down is not something. That slope or the act of going up or down is not independently in that hill as such. It depends on the person on the position of the person, whether the person is at the bottom or the top of the hill. Accordingly, you will say you are going down or going up, climbing up, or descending. Okay, and so in this way, what we understand is that the hill itself, we cannot say it's ascending or something that is ascended or something that is descended as such. But according to the person who is going up or down, we can say the person is ascending or descending. So in this way, everything is relative. In relation to the person at the bottom, you would talk about climbing up or ascending. When in relation to the person on top, you'll say they'll say they're descending the hill. And so, in this way, the ascension or the descension is not something that is intrinsic in the hill as such. It depends on the person. And similarly, it is the case with something like a glass here. Usually when we talk about glass, it's something transparent, for example. And so you can see whatever is in that glass, you can see it from outside as well. And when you look from the inside out, you can also see what's outside through that glass. And so, whether that glass is transparent or not also can be taught in terms of relation in relation to somebody. The transparency itself is not intrinsic in the object itself. Because if it were, then without that kind of transparency of the glass, I mean, you would say somebody may not be able to see through the walls or something like that. For example, there are some cases of clairvoyance, for example, where people are able to see through whatever may be at the behind the wall. The person can see through, although the wall is not transparent as such, the person can see through that wall, whatever is behind that. And so it depends also on the observer, the person, or the faculty or that person has developed, whether something is transparent or they can be seen without obstruction or not. It also depends on the person as well. And so, when you talk about something obstructing something from you and so forth, it depends on your vision as well. So similarly, when you talk about the glass, it's transparent or not. It's not something intrinsic in the glass, but it also depends on the perceiver, the person. So sometimes, even if you may have some kind of a glass like this, I mean, some animals are not able to, make distinction between the object itself. And so there may be cases where animals do not see through that glass as such. And so because of that, we can say the transparency of something or whether something is obstructed or not from your perception is also dependent on the perceiver, the person as well.
Under Shibuze, the Mubushin Tumala, Jibri Mijeki, DJ Mayubatila, Shabu or the Dian, Eugene Shiba the Dune, DJ in the Minsia Malu, Nasu Niki Michel, DJ Mayuba, Mishishinda, the DJ Mayuba chatting environment. Yang Mubushin Tumala, Jibri Mijeki, Indich, or 当时3月是对待起了西部那个的事情啊，就那个几个的地，别家下回那我不行，碰了这个没这个事，年个是对你下来的嘛，年个当，我不行起了对你下来的嘛，都被顶上的出家看些的，这个男的这个收入的我不通不多，是吧？他说出家的就没谁的嘞，那你大南县的收入的收入南路的，我不直接通用。 通当的700几元嘛，对不对？俺这去通一个，还要通呀，3嘛3个700几多呢？就告诉我的，还讲的在西部通一几个，西部那个的，西部3部嘛通的，西部那个嘛的是了呢？那这样老推的，这700的税他去的，俺那是他去的，但多的那些为那西部3的，西部的最大感觉就是那地方了，3瓦3，当时3瓦，我不行。 3瓦，我不行3瓦几，我不行通往的米地吧，都是那个多，西部是那看得起那个地方了，我不行大几的，两都家里这些家嘛都，3线面呢，3线个西部地方来，我不行大通往了米地去，不对，我不行大通往了米地吧，基本是喇叭响的地多，你通嘛了，那你西部响去通了。 就是前两处通往了地马上西部，就是第二季的西部那屋是那个了。就是我不行通往了地部的米街去事情，我不行通往了地部的米街去事情，我不行的地点西部的我下呀嘛，我不行见面为呢，3线面的3线远一点，不，3落3的，个3句就的3落3线对的个3线强过的，对面3落的3当。 月3号的3的3节月的钱，我3不税的，4句月反正个 世界的心里下头有了，世界面呢世界的下头，脚面呢脚不下头，脚不面呢脚下头嘛，实际的卡拉面呢手不下头嘛，手不面呢卡拉谁手，对吧？手啊谁的，实际的手啊的脚谁的，我的下头，这最基本的，所以今天就讲了，马祖去趟去，人家身上的照啊那些，常常怕成地点嘛都。应该我记不起，不然记不起都是触动的让的年纪要嘛的是，我就算有的，记不起，我也忘不去，我也是。
So basically, what Rinpoche is going through is like glass is called something which does not obstruct us from seeing through or seeing something through it. So in that case, something that is not obstructed or obscured by the object to see through is maybe called a glass. A glass is something that does not obstruct you from seeing through something else, beyond that object. But here also, it depends on our perception as well. Our perception, maybe we can talk about the eye, When you have the eye consciousness, for example, and you look at the glass, you see it transparent. And so because of that perception that you have, you say the glass is transparent, because you can see through it. And apart from that, without having that perception, you cannot talk about the glass being transparent as such. And of course, there are cases where, these days there are certain machines. When you put the machine on the wall, it can see through. You can actually see what's behind the wall as well. Although the wall is not transparent as such, but there are cases like that as well. And so in that respect, the wall is not a glass as such. So if the transparency is only because of the glass itself, then the wall cannot, when you put the machine on the wall, you may not be able to see what's behind it as such. And so it depends on the perception, the perceiver, the person as well. In that, then you may say that, the glass should be something which is very clear, like crystal clear, that you can see things through it, what's inside the glass and so forth. But who decides that is the question. And how do you decide that a glass should be, absolutely clear thing that you can use to see, that is really transparent in that way. And so here, when you say a glass is transparent, the transparency also has to do with in relation to other objects. When you do not have any other object, you cannot say, I can see the other object through this glass. So in that respect, the other objects, in relation to the objects that you see through, the glass is transparent. Apart from that, you cannot talk about the glass being transparent. And so here, what we can understand is that transparency of the glass, the fact or the characteristic of the glass having that character of being able to obstructing any other object. And you have to have other objects that are not obstructed by the glass that you can see through the glass. And so in this way, what we can understand is that without other objects, you cannot talk about the transparency of the glass as such, because otherwise you cannot talk about seeing other objects that are behind this glass, through the glass itself. And so that shows the relativism of the glass transparency. So without there being other objects, you cannot talk about the glass being transparent. Without the glass, transparency of the glass, you cannot talk about the other objects not being obstructed by the glass. Therefore, you can see through it and so forth. And so, in other words, what you have is the other objects that are not obstructed, and the glass, and the action, the act of your being able to see through your perception, with your perception, and seeing the other objects not being obstructed by the transparency of that glass as well. So in other words, we can also talk about the action, the actor, and then the agent or the actor, and then the acted upon object. All of these are, in other words, relative and dependent. Without there being the action, you cannot say there is an agent. Without the agent, there is no action. And without the action and the agent, there is no object that you act upon as such. And so all three are interdependent. And it is the same case with our, eating something. You have to have a food that you eat. You have to have go through the action of eating, and then also the act of the person who is eating it. And so the action of eating, the person eating, and what is eaten, the food, are also interdependent. So in this way, what we can understand is with these analogies is everything. All phenomena, as we usually call it, use the term phenomena. It's like a network of the cobweb of different things acting on one another, and so everything is, in other words, dependent on one another. Apart from that, you don't have, you can't talk about. You cannot have single out something and say this is this without it doesn't depend on anything else. You cannot have anything like that. Everything is interdependent.
实际上，跟着记了西部了的，都是结果进的起没呢。西部是他那大师个西地了，你西部的是入驻推就要嘛的是，跟继续的做这点，西南。 同样的用多，你的用多，对西部来的是嘛咯？在西部，现在西部社的，在具体几乎多年些没多。在西部社的看得到，在西部社的，俺当初的米的西部到去，说哪往远了去？俺今天的，我不在先通了，俺说的米西的，我不先通了，这不没解开的，今天我不去了。 俺做的米的西瓜了，对的西部的生意，就老推崇了。但米的西瓜占领过去，你就有为呢？然后俺做米的西瓜就长嘛同意去下为呢？是吧？俺做米西的，你们这个长嘛西部的对吧？那些吃长被长嘛没同意下呢？但西部生意就搞要来的。现在的农教育部干啥了？导部年当了对年西部生意的下不清楚。 俺说米西在西部，他说西部的角度跟我不同的，这个没到，但是西部的是，老出不恰下。但米西现在的多，真的，成都的米西，他说小500是嘛的，500的米西西部区的西部年了下了通马了，是吧？都哪我看通不多，哪我的可以，我不先通了，这不是一个月底，那个现在不没把的疏通了，疏通些。 明白的，被米西给疏通些，通了出境的。俺说了明白的来说，那疏通要嘛的。明白来说，那对了西部检查下来呀，通就嘛的。所以说，那的这个对你通过了，这另一个了，这类是导致干啥了？对的西部下呀嘛，可能因为呢，我不先通了，你这个接近是西部呢，西部的顺对了下来呀，我不先通了。 咱我不行，通就近，顺对了下那样，下不长期，长来的我不行，通一起，西部的下那的，还是我们的，通一起不标的，但这个接，是吧？这个接面，现在你大学学的， 항상 수술 뛰는 시에를 샤스. 근데 이지 시벌을 뛰디 시부스에 관 요만. 이지 시벌을 뛰디 시부 라이면 공부 시벌을 뛰디 시부 라이만도.
So again, coming back to the glass, you know, something that we give the label, you know, glass. If we have to say that the glass is a glass because it has this characteristic feature of, you know, not obstructing our vision, that we can see through the object, then in that case, if that is the kind of a definition, so to say, of a glass, then you know, we have also plastics that are transparent. Do we call that glass or not? We don't call the plastic, which is transparent, glass as such. And so in this way, you know, you have to have something in relation to which you can talk about this being a glass and not others being glass. And therefore, we also have the eye consciousness, the visual perception, because of which, I mean, we can see the object, and what we see is not obstructed by the object itself. And so, in relation to that eye visual, you know, perception that we have, we can, on the one hand, say this is a glass as such. And so, on the other hand, you know, when you develop a certain quality within yourself, in your mental perception, that you are able to see everything without anything being, you know, obstructed from your vision. I mean, in that case, nothing really obstructs you from seeing anything around you. So that's not a glass as such, but it's your faculty which has developed that kind of ability to see everything, you know, without any obstruction. But that perception or the faculty that you have developed is not glass as such. So when we talk about a glass, I mean, it has to do with something that is conventionally existing, that is conventionally accepted as being such an object. And you know, that is that you can see through, that can be used in a certain for certain functions and so forth. And so just you know, we suffice with that kind of characteristic or nature of the object that we call glass. If the glass were to be something that, when you put it in front of you, that you can see through it, you know, with your perception, then if you bring an owl in front of a glass in the daylight, will the owl be able to see through the glass as such? No, because the light in the daytime obstructs the vision of the owl, and therefore for the owl, that glass is not transparent at all, because it has no way to see the glass or the objects outside of the glass through it, because of the light that obstructs its eyes from seeing it. And so in this way, I mean, for us, of course, because of light, we are able to see the object, and we can see what's, you know, behind it or what's inside it through the glass, because of light as well. So there's light, perception, and you know, and then we use also these labels. And so, because of all these different you know, factors that come together, we can talk about something that is called glass as such. Whereas for the owl, the light is an obstruction. And so in this way, you know, the faculty that you have developed to see everything is just mental. It's not even eye perception or anything like that. But that mental perception or consciousness is not glass as such. When we talk about a glass seeing through something, we don't need to talk in terms of our mental consciousness, mental perception, but we usually talk about seeing through in relation to our eye, the visual perception. And so in relation to the visual perception that we have and in dependence on the light in the daytime, and then we can talk about the glass being there and that it is transparent and so forth.
实际上，在讲的讲经济东北一边原的去讲的经北呢，第定度上芒波当小芒波的当呢，我不看的经北呢嘞，即去行芒波这个对起些呢，你让的我的下边嘛多，我不先看了嘛对不起些，让的我下推呀，下推呀，下推呀，他怕是看的嘛这些可能叫推名字，对呢。 当然，我说西部是那位，其他西部地的担保样蛮多上方的，对不对？是。大体我这个我们让东亚就到东北的西部送去，苏东北五去，远了，我们俺送过了，你哪里送去？苏东北五送，苏东北的些送的地方，苏的全大库上，苏的我干的是那个土巴的街吧，比如说容啊，是吧？土巴的街吧，看他几个几个的，俺的去土也远的去。 日夜月的这个，熟悉这个我了，熟悉这个主要如果是个什么，不讲了做的技术，宿舍有的这个，不让多的做个人的去下推有的是不是？俺这是土巴的这个，土也有的这个熟悉，土色这个还是这个土色的，这边有的哪个怕讲的，这边有上，这边的土了土色，这个土色基本上我不认定过。 积极的吐出来，基本上都没得搞到吐过的，是吧？我吐下去，其实吐出来的泥月上，吐天气当吐色的泥月上，吐出来的，吐不的结不出来的，那边的马都被也是我不行地方，日本人呢，日也没对吧？地方吐也没，可是日天气当这个吐天气我不行这边呢，属药嘛。 你股的恰股比较强，我说新条是都是要做个人的，新的高的是你都是，就把跑步都是要让个人呢，你个让呢，他学的出学的定点了，出学的他学的定点了，都是，但关于技术说呢，你个领了，所以经常性熟悉的样，我不你动机起来你熟悉一下的。 这个地了土天气当，你土色的这个水你有问题，你说是写多嘛？也是地了土天气也没问题呢，土巴的结巴是手工下的，其实每一场手动不无这些，取几个点上了蛮不当，这个一上蛮不当。
So, the text says the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic nature. And so, whatever thing you may bring up, I mean, anything that you can think of or talk about, label and so forth, everything is empty of any intrinsic nature, that they don't have any existence from their own side. Everything is dependent on many different factors for their with existence. So that is what we should understand by this expression, empty of intrinsic nature. And so the text goes through the five aggregates. First, giving the introductory kind of the beginning of the teaching on emptiness. And then the five aggregates, regarding the five aggregates. I mean, after that we come through the fourfold emptiness, teaching on fourfold emptiness. But first the teaching, the text goes through the five aggregates. So the first aggregate that we talk about is usually, it's I think called form. Some kind of, something like matter. Yeah? And so what is a form is something that can hold its identity, that can kind of stand on something. or can be stuck on something. And so when we have the definition of a form as that which is stuck on something, that which sticks or stands on something, what that shows is that you have something which gets obstructed. When you touch something else, it's obstructed. That's what is meant by suk. And so when you say that it is something that is obstructed, what this shows is there are two things at least. One that is obstructed, or that the other that obstructs it. And so without these two things, when you have only one thing, you cannot talk about being obstructed as such. Therefore, we have to understand that without any touch, there's no obstruction of the object. And so without the obstruction, you cannot talk about the form as such. And so in this way, form is something that is a phenomena that gets obstructed, or that kind of gets stuck at something. It's like if you have two poles, touching, like this. These two poles are dependent on each other. If you pull one down, the other will not stand. It will fall. If you similarly pull the other one, the other will also fall. So what this shows is that these two poles are dependent on one another. And so similarly, it's the case with form. So form is dependent on other factors. So here, something that we call a form or a matter is always dependent on many different factors coming together to make it. And so just like a pole, a form or matter is something that is always obstructed, which shows that it is dependent on something else.
根据有个大概给俺的，俺让忘事，我弟要嘛的意思。今年就讲了，俺是南京弄的，苏州的酒吧书是俺弄啷个都是个呗。变成叔喇叭讲了，酒吧书你弄啷个，这个店里，就弄啷就肯定是啷个嘞。会下讲了，酒吧书是俺弄啷个都是个呗，是嘛咯？日本讲了，酒吧书是俺弄啷个都是个，是嘛咯？区长了每年恰当几码的时间，记录去送多的，让人记录3个月了。区长了每年我的说了，工部长了每年，你下到下岗的休息，俺弄啷个，因为下长忙的休息弄啷个啷嘛了，他是年下岗的休息，年喇叭岗的休息，俺岗的休息，很心里恰当起，先生恰当的找俺来，俺我娘的录的，俺我娘的录的，俺星期六给俺我娘的录。我对俺们准备的那个我讲的，第个的是呢，人家都的，人家有俺有个什么的，但第二个人家有俺有嘛，俺都在打上。牛毛厂们干土货，在上班。
So we talk about the form, and it also and to understand that things have no intrinsic or inherent existence as such, and that understanding should be extended to all phenomena. That whatever you take, anything. That you take is empty of any inherent existence, that they are dependently arisen. So we were talking about form, but mainly when we meditate or think about emptiness, we should actually think of emptiness in relation to yourself. That you are empty of any inherent existence. Because when you have attachment or anger, how do they arise in you? Because, for example, the attachment arises when you say, oh, this is nice to me. You see something to be nice, and then you get attracted to it, and therefore you have that attachment where you see that object's beauty as something, beyond what the beauty that is in the object. And so in this way you become attached to, you have attachment to the object. And so you won't say, oh, this object is beautiful because that person sees it beautiful. You don't use other people's vision or experience as reason for the attractiveness of the object. You say, this is attractive because I see it this way. I find this attractive. And so accordingly you become attached. And it is similarly the case with anger. When you say, when you see something as attractive to you, you find it to be pleasant and pleasurable and all that, you become attached. And similarly, when that same object, with regard to that same object, when someone kind of tries to disrupt you from seeing that beautiful object, you become angry. Because in relation to you, you are saying, oh, this person is obstructing my vision, obstructing this object from my vision, therefore you become angry. And so it's similarly when your relatives or your family members are criticized by somebody because the family members are related to you, you say, oh, this person is bad because he's criticizing me, he's criticizing my family members, and so forth. And so accordingly you become angry. So because of that attachment to yourself, and the reason for your attachment and anger is basically you, yourself. And so without that, you will not have attachment or anger as such. As Rinpoche already mentioned, that you don't use other people, as reasons to become attached to something. So you have your own self, because of which you become attached. attached to something, or you become angry, or hate somebody or something. So in this way, attachment and anger also arise in you because of your notion of who you are. And so, apart from that, you don't become attached or angry. And it's like when you see something in a dream, yeah, when you wake up from the dream, for example, in the dream you may have seen beautiful horses or elephants and so forth. But when you wake up, there's nothing there. So when you think about things being empty, that, although you see this thing as being beautiful or ugly or anything like that, there is nothing intrinsically beautiful or ugly in the object as such. It's your perception. Because they appear to you as such, you become, you call it attractive or ugly and so forth. So it is the same with dreams. You can use the dream as analogy to understand that there is nothing in reality, out there. So, because what you see in dream is no more there as soon as you wake up. And so we use the term, when we talk about emptiness, we also say things do not have any ultimate existence. So the ultimacy here basically means, reality, a kind of an independent reality, that nothing has any intrinsic reality as such. And so, because of your attachment to something, you become, you cling on to it, and then when someone tries to disturb you, then you become angry. And so it's all because of you as the reason to become attached or angry, because of this notion of an I that you have. And therefore, what you should understand is, because things are dependent, relative, and many different factors come together to make something. And therefore, you should think of this I also, having no intrinsic or independent existence as such. And so, to show how, because of you, you become angry or attached to your things and, beings and so forth. To give an example here, when someone hits you with a stick, you hit on your maybe arm, but what actually the stick touches is your flesh and maybe the bone. But you don't say, oh, he hit my flesh and bone, therefore I get angry. You don't say that. As soon as somebody hits you, you get angry because you feel you are hit by that person. And so this body that you have is that is made of flesh and blood. Of course, it's hit directly, but you say you are hit, and therefore you become angry. You don't say, my body is hit by this person and I become angry. The immediate reaction that you have is, getting angry. And so, if the person hits, if the stick that the person has hits the flesh, because the flesh is hidden. Any kind of flesh that may be in front of the person, if that is hit by that stick, you should get angry, but you don't. So because of that body, the flesh and the bone attached to you, and you have the sense of my body, my, the hand, my bone, and so forth, you get angry. Okay, so, but then this body is not you as such. Although you get angry, the body is not you. The flesh is not you. The bone is not you. But you get angry because you have the sense of the notion of I. I am it. And because of your attachment to it, you get angry. And so Rinpoche also says that just any kind of thing is not the factor for you to get angry. like the flesh itself or the bone, any kind of bone or flesh, when they are hit, you don't get angry as such. But because you have the sense of an I, my body, the possessiveness, the possession, sense of possession, therefore you get angry when you are hit.
동반이 수세 다 동바 다랑다 랑신지 동배区다랑다你수세 지니 샤고 동배区지의 수스마 또 동배区지의 수샤야 동반이 수수 소레 동반이 시마 동반이 수시 많이 세디 동니당 동시区지니 그디 모지의 도가 다 되어 있습니다. 근데区진 수다고 된 안수를 단다 강나와 이장이 차라 공부 되고 있어요. 거기 타도기 내단지가 고랑 신지 동배 차지라. 고랑 신지 매버 차 다랑라 된다 되는데 그래서 한수기 차네 공부 된 거, 년수기 차네 된다 된 것을 말도 이니 모수수요 말이에요.
And so the text goes through form is empty and emptiness is form. And emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. Yeah. So what this shows is the fourfold emptiness, as it's usually called. So when it says form is empty, I mean, it's not talking about any other thing as being empty as such, but form itself is empty of any intrinsic existence because it's dependent on many other factors. And so apart from that emptiness of the form, and you don't have the form as something separate from that emptiness as such. You can't separate the form empty and emptiness of the form and form as such. Because the form is empty, emptiness, that emptiness is the the property of that form. And so emptiness is form means that. In other words, now what this is talking about is the form and its emptiness are we say in nature, of same identity or same nature or essence, but conceptually we can make the distinction between the emptiness and form. The form becomes the basis for the emptiness of the form, and the emptiness of the form is the characteristic or the property of the form. So though there are, we cannot distinguish these through the perceptions or visual perception and so forth, but in our mind, conceptually, we can make distinction between the form and its emptiness. And so what this means is that though there is a form, it doesn't have any intrinsic existence. The form is an appearance, whereas the ultimate nature of that form, the ultimate nature, how it exists, is emptiness.
공부 시간을 집어래. 이제는 저어던 도시는 너무 시간 또 어디 시고지 총망제. 자, 비인지기 총망도 많이 있습니다. 디네마 총망 가서 배경을 총망 빙고를 뭐지 나다. 샤르고 디자인 최단이 동원이 스님이고 마지고 망가고 주문으로 지금 강매고 오 샤르고 디자인나 동반이를 주는 사람도 유명한 지금 강이 이지나무시 칸지 바르도야 매도 마리고 가지고 디지도 뭐나미 마도가야 매도 냥것이야고 아니 샤르고 디자인나 동반이는 줌에 처음에 조심해서 이미지니까 뭐나 숨도래 숨도 마투바야 매도스 디바도 지당기 뭐나 되지 통한디 단단 나지 가서 이송거리 있어 너무 체주 제딘세다 스님매고 지원매고 마 가방에고 지모메고 지모다 제고 지모메고 강메고 세고 주제디 서무치 주제시 디간다 디기 된지 배변로 통하지 무딘라다 랑신지 동바라 타니도 디레 스니 요바당 안지와당 가바스 디시야마도 된 담바 스니 요마레 지오 요마레 가바 요마레 지마 요마레 지마다 제와스 시에요 제제 제주 지마 시에요 마레 지마티다 제와 시에요 마스 어디 송입니다 다 간다 사마 동반이기랑 시 송이고 된다고
통함수
공항디 자리고 지len 취단지 동반이 스니메고 마지로 가바스 시원의 송디
사모 계속
지와메고 강메고 우 스티바토
저럼
저런 강한 손 강한디 수준이 강한디 시 공이 시군이지
yes. And so, the form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is not other than form, and form too is not other than emptiness. And also, likewise, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness are all empty. So this phrase or passage shows the path of accumulation and part of preparation. We talked about the 5-tiered path earlier. And so these two paths, the first two, for example, Bodhisattva paths are shown by this passage. And then next comes what are known as the 8 profound characteristics, where the text says, therefore, Shariputra, all phenomena are emptiness. They are without defining characteristics, they are not born, they do not cease, they are not defiled, they are not undefiled, they are not deficient, and they are not complete. So these, this passage is said to show that the path of seeing with these, the 8 profound aspects. And and then after that, the passage starts, which starts with, therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feelings, no perceptions, and so forth. So from there on, the path of meditation is shown. So all of these, in all of these passages, you find mention of there being not this, not that, not that, right? And so what this shows is that ultimately, when you try to, dissect things into their parts and smaller parts and so forth, nothing can be found in and of themselves, and therefore ultimately there's nothing that exists. And whereas things exist only in convention, so that's need to be understood. And so when the text says there is no characteristics, all phenomena are emptiness, they are without defining characteristics, they are not born and they do not cease and all that. What you have to understand by that negative term is that things do not ultimately exist, but in conventional terms they exist.
시러지 파르도 심어가 땡지네 디스 다디 지대 받치는 다 상자게미네 그 수제 아다 시러지 파르도 심어가 땡지네 디 가르치고 있으면 생각 지범에 잡으면 신주는 신량년에 타신도 상제지고 시러지 파르도 심어가 땡네 상제지고 디다도 상제지고 상세디 생각 지범에 잡으면 봐 신주로 신도 내봐 시신이지 아니 탈렌디 시신이게 탈렌디 예디 시베타 코방사니 아니 시에타 체베냐데 딜라 미네바 오디데 타투기노 데리무지 안데 소디가 또 시레지 파르드 심바가 띠네 센의 지바메 생기 지마 타다야 시레지 파르드 심바가 띠네 다버지 고래 생기 지마 타다 지마 다시 이부 조디 시레지 파르드 심바가 지마디 다버 제고 상 센의 지바메지 짜바메디 이 짜바메디 세디 야, 사tum보다 또 통부가 예당을 소유주디 안되네 그라야 동반이 전 공부다 동반이 전로 주바이나 니 나중에 가서 미지去了주바토 가서 니 송도 그래서 동반이 전 같이 고定时고 유바이나리 내 당부비 거니 시바이나 생라 잡아내거다 생로 추바내거다 생배 나가나신 자신이 가래는 흉진 차 그들이 동반이 공매 표현 디스너에 동반이 공매 니버티 되시는가 안다 가서 생디 추추추 에 류자시당 너무 디수 제디데 당도 당지시네 또 마다 랑추추 너무 비치와다 당생이 치마는 진데 누구 당도 당디고 다방 요 말에 슬랑디가 생배마 뢰샤 수시 디버티 디버 당부제는 디베마 뢰샤 수시 타베 당부들마 뢰디르 수시 이 이제 잡아 매지 잡아 매고 잡아 매고 이제 내 당부비 거니야 디기 사변스너에 디기 기자와스너에 뭐예요? 그래서 굉장히 표현지고요. 사실은 이게 된다 뒤뒤지 어떻게 다디 어디만 가서 가서 놓았다.
그래서 디카도 윤대 받자면 남기 감시송서 안 내봐 매었어요.
그다음에 상대스만은 도와는 게
싫어.
인지니어디
스무디.
인지니어디 세디 디데바 디데바
And then next comes, therefore, Shariputra, since bodhisattvas have no attainment, they rely on this perfection of wisdom and abide in it. And so this term that is used here as abiding basically shows that of the bodhisattva on the 10th ground, which is also the final kind of bodhisattva level, which is called the final path without any interruption, which is totally absorbed in emptiness. Okay, and so that's the bodhisattva on the 10th ground, just before becoming a Buddha. So the term abiding here refers to that level of 10th bodhisattva. Bodhisattva on the 10th ground. And here, it says, having no obscuration in their minds, they have no fear, and by going utterly beyond error, they will reach the end of nirvana. And this also goes through this. All the Buddhas who abide in the 3 times attain the full awakening of unexcelled perfect enlightenment by relying on this profound perfection of wisdom. And so here what we need to also try to understand is that the bodhisattvas, through their practice of both emptiness and the compassion, combining these two, they do not abide neither in the extreme of samsara, the cycle of existence, nor in the extreme of nirvana. And so these 2 extremes are avoided through bodhisattva path. And so, when it says they have no fear, and by going utterly beyond error and all that, what we need to understand is that all defilements must be, by this kind of expression, the whole passage, what we need to understand is that all the defilements that we have must be purified through the meditation on emptiness. And so when you develop the understanding or the insight into the emptiness, you also need to have certain strength within yourself, inner strength, because of which you won't fear meditation on emptiness and carrying out the bodhisattva practices and so forth. And so, in other words, even as a beginner in the meditation on emptiness, you should try to develop this attitude within yourself, this strength, inner strength, not to feel, fearful of meditating on emptiness. And so you need to familiarize your mind on this kind of meditation on emptiness, so that in the end you will not fear anything. I mean, you will not have any kind of anxiety or fear to really focus on and practice meditation on emptiness. So there comes within this bodhisattva path also a stage where you develop this inner strength, a powerful inner strength, where you don't fear meditation emptiness, that you can actually you have that kind of fortitude within yourself to meditate on emptiness, the courage to do so, and all that. And so, when you develop that kind of a fearlessness, nothing can obstruct you, from meditating on emptiness. You feel like you are released, in the space, and it's like this. The space before us is without any obstruction, and so similarly you feel some kind of relief within yourself, and so you need to develop that kind of courage and fortitude to meditate on emptiness, and that comes through meditation on the selflessness. So you need to familiarize your mind with this meditation on selflessness, that there is no self which is independently existing. And so that this will really bring about this sense of great relief within yourself, that you will not fear meditation of emptiness. And then which says the next passage which says, therefore one should know that the mantra and so forth, we briefly covered it yesterday. And then, just to briefly go through the next passage, therefore one should know the mantra, that the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge and so forth. And so here, actual or the real perfection of wisdom is the wisdom realizing emptiness. This, we call it primordial wisdom or exalted wisdom, which realizes emptiness. And so, because this wisdom of emptiness overcomes all the suffering, Rinpoche में मासूम है टीचर बात, dung ale mari kan ba dung yes yes ji nyam do mas. And so this wisdom of emptiness, what it helps us is to overcome suffering together with its causes, and that's factor that overcomes our suffering with its causes is this wisdom, which is called the great, the mantra of great knowledge, and then unexcelled mantra, overcoming all the ignorance that are within ourselves, and then the mantra equal to the unequaled, meaning that the state of Buddhahood. The level of Buddhahood, and then the mantra that quells all suffering. So, in other words, this wisdom of emptiness overcomes all our suffering together with its causes. And it is also true because it is not deceptive. And then the mantra of the perfect wisdom is proclaimed, that yata kate kate bhagavad varsamadi bodhisattva and so forth. And then we come across this next passage, Shariputra, the bodhisattvas, the great beings, should train in the perfection of wisdom in this way. So the Buddha, and then thereupon the Blessed One arose from that meditative absorption. So from the beginning of this text until this point, Shariputra was asked the question, and then Avalokiteshvara gave answer to that. And so, in the vision of the people in the audience, what was happening was that Shariputra questioned, and then Avalokiteshvara answered his question. Although all this happened because of the blessing of the Buddha, and therefore, when the Buddha arose from that meditation, so in other words, now because the teaching happened through the blessing of the Buddha, and this particular teaching is also called the discourse, which was blessed by the Buddha. Although the Buddha himself didn't speak directly, but because of his blessing and because of his having this intention to give such a teaching, and through that the Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara were blessed, and therefore his teaching came out of their mouth. But actually, the Buddha himself was the one who taught it through his blessing. And so this is a sutra, which is teaching of the Buddha in the blessing, the true blessing. And then it says, as the Blessed One arose, uttered these words, excellent, excellent, O noble child, it is just so, it should be just so. One must practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have revealed. And so what this, for them, that all the Tathagatas will rejoice. So what this actually shows is that the Buddha had the intention to give such a teaching, and therefore is acknowledging what Avalokiteshvara said in response to Shariputra's question. Whatever Avalokiteshvara has said is just so, as the Buddha himself had intended to teach. And so in this way, apparently what we can see is it came from Avalokiteshvara's mouth, but in reality, it's Buddha's teaching through his blessing. And therefore the Buddha acknowledged, gave this acknowledgement. And then we just finished through to the end of the teaching, and it says at the end, as the Blessed One arose, uttered these words, the Venerable Shariputra, the Holy Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, along with the entire assembly, including the worlds of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, all rejoiced and hailed what the Blessed One has said. And so, in other words, all the people or the beings in that audience in the teaching, of the teaching, kind of thanked the Buddha for giving this teaching.
다 도주나 싫어 님부슈가 이날에 싫어지 바르도 심부슈날에 너무 동반이디 상제 중대 내지 다 당만기 님부슈 니시기 또原的面的 차리 상제 중대 내지만 송야기 나오라 송주 原的面的 지디 다 다음에 취지 다음에 세상 이 고카부양 我看过朗上关系的有一句话的，讲的第短大的过瘾呢，叔叔的拼都亲不起，叔叔你自己别叫打一起，叔叔就让出多这些年，做些别推一起。我们的过年朗上，卡拉新不用有没得希望上的，卡拉新不哪里啥样，没得没些的看的，卡拉新不啥子月那里面那里，这卡拉新不啥子月我那边，到家的怕不，真这一边，超级当，你自己不起。 네, 요지. 고상 차가 있네요. 만다고 차지 요지. 이, 다, 그 어디 가서나. 이게 좀 진짜 아주 세나로도 상사지 가서 수수기 몸병 되나다. 저한테 직하는 데가 지부시부시고도 나라도 야부지 용주 세나지 사수소를 차지 디나신 돈이 된다지 그것도 차서나 원래이다. 집에 가서 그래. 아주 쉬고 나시게 당대 버딘데 퇴식이 수시 상상 아주 잘 놓아 처음에 어디나 많이 세상 하장의 표현 친구 표현 친구 이거 이거 뒤주연도 나지 추팅 진이的 니마 진이的 나와 진이 장지 유체마 많이 봐 또 못되는 장애기 계시고 인사에 두지치 다 지어 진인데 난 누구게 다시 그게 내가 되지
So whether it's a Heart Sutra or the essence of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, or the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in general, or emptiness, what these teachings show us is the profound wisdom of emptiness. And so, because of this, of all the teachings of the Buddha, the teaching on selflessness, or the theory of no self, is the most profound teaching of the Buddha. It is that teaching which you cannot do without in practicing the teaching of the Buddha to fulfill your goal as well as the goal of others. So it is that indispensable kind of teaching. To preserve your own integrity as well. And so, when you do meditation on emptiness, there comes a point in your, practice that you feel, now, I can even do without, even if I do not get any delicious meals or anything like that, I can, still do this practice. And that kind of, courage and some kind of an excitement also happens within yourself. So through your familiarization with this teaching on selflessness or emptiness, at some point you feel some confidence within yourself. And that gives you, further courage and encouragement to pursue this teaching and meditation on emptiness. I mean, some kind of excitement can happen to you, that you feel that you are able to, beginning to fulfill your goal. And so there's excitement, and that therefore you will keep pursuing this path. So, that kind of inner joy, or, the excitement and the happiness that you have would be far greater than, 100 times greater than Rinpoche is saying, getting a very delicious meal. Okay, so what you should try to do is try to pay attention to it, take interest in the teaching of the profound view of emptiness on a daily basis. is not just spending 1 or 2 sessions or some short, periods of time, but continue your meditation on it, so that in the end you'll be able to fulfill your goal. So Rinpoche is saying that we don't have time for question and answer. Sorry for that, but Rinpoche will pray for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next year, next Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you. My wonderful Sheila.
Yeah, also, thank you. Also, thank you everybody. Also,